Wolf Radio, broadcast in Carrollton at the University of West Georgia.
Welcome to Wolves of the Written Word.
More college students should read.
Reading is cool.
Have you ever read a book before?
Of course I have. This show used to be a podcast.
Dystopian is my favorite genre.
That's depressing.
Wow, I can't believe that's banned.
Wolves of the Written Word.
Wolves of the Written Word.
Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wolves of the Written Word. I'm your host, Sean Smith.
I'm your co-host, Janelle Michelle.
And Adea, unfortunately, is not with us for today, but we are with her in spirit.
Of course, always. She will always be here with us.
Of course. For those of you who are just tuning in, of course, and those of us who have been previous fans of Wolves of the Written Word, Wolves of the Written Word is the book show where we talk about all things reading, literature, and novels. Mm-hmm. We have a couple of rules here on the show. Rule number one, of course, is that we talk about every book fairly, the good and the bad. Rule number two is that we have to at least read one of the books of what we're talking about, but it's fine because since we're still experiencing new kinds of reads, it's totally fine, of course, if you haven't read it before as well. And lastly, the final rule is just, to have fun, of course. We're all here to talk about reading and have fun, of course. It's just incredible into how certain things are and to how things are incredibly different. So just to kind of, get everything up and running, we are actually going to be talking about Black authors.
Woo, woo, woo.
Of course, it's very important to talk about this thing because I know that it is Black History Month. And of course, this is kind of like a very important kind of topic that, of course, we all agreed upon to discuss.
Yes, of course. And even if it wasn't Black History Month, it's always important to talk about Black authors or just POC authors in general.
Yes. So to kind of begin our discussion, of course, before we kind of dive in, most of these segments we'll be talking about our favorite author. Unfortunately, since Adea is not here, we of course have to change up most of our segments. But for now, we are just going to mostly be focusing on what our favorite author is and trying to get more experience with us. Mm-hmm. Before, of course, I go into my favorite author, of course, let's talk about just a little bit about what was the, I guess, first time that you have at least read like a Black author?
The first Black author that I ever read, basically, kind
yes.
of? Is that the question? I don't actually know, but the first Black author that I can remember reading is coincidentally actually my favorite Black author, which is Kwame Alexander. I love his books. I think the first time I read one of his books was back when I was in middle school, and I remember reading that book and being like, I relate to this story so much. This is so interesting. And then I found out he was a Black author, and I was like, this is really cool, because at the time, I don't think most of the authors that I was reading or most of the authors who wrote my favorite stories, I don't think most of them were Black. So it was cool to see something that was so creative and feel represented in a media that I didn't really normally feel represented in.
Of course. For me, I can't really directly remember my first African-American author, but I do remember at least reading similar stories written by African-American women authors as well. And I remember back in middle school, we always used to read poems on different Black authors from the Harlem Renaissance. And I actually did talk a little bit about the influence of the Harlem Renaissance last year in February during Black History Month on when this show actually used to be a podcast. Langston Hughes. It's incredible because, it's a way to kind of express ourselves, to, connect to this culture as well, even beyond anything as well towards the African-American community. Yeah. So just to begin, of course, our discussion, of course, my favorite Black author that at least I kind of deeply connected with when I was younger, that she's still writing, of course, a little bit today, but that I still connect with as well is Sharon M. Draper.
Sharon M. Draper. Okay, make sure you guys write that down. We're giving you a lot of recommendations this episode.
Yes, write that down, of course. Sharon M. Draper. Now, Sharon M. Draper, she's mostly a children's author, but she mostly writes about young and adolescent African American experiences. She's a 2-time winner of the Coretta Scott King Award, and she mostly writes YA. But this is kind of a different YA. It feels more grounded, more real, a lot less exaggerated and cliched that most people expect YA to be. And it never exaggerates any of these points. It takes it very seriously. It's just incredible because this is kind of the author that I kind of first focus on when it comes towards African American literature.
Interesting. What would you say, like past obviously, YA and then reading her stories, what would you say like draws you in to reading whatever Sharon writes that is like, I connect with this so deeply?
Well, I used to live in Atlanta. I would say it's kind of not really the projects, but more so like, some slums or like, abandoned houses. So the first book that I read from Sharon M. Draper was something called Forged by Fire. And I related heavily to that book because, it connected to all of the people that I've seen throughout my life, including my grandmother, my mother, my sister, riding your bike, but also kind of not really openly riding your bike because, around in Atlanta, it was like kind of a very rough time. I also related to mostly just school and trying to hang out and trying to fit in as well. Like it definitely connected with me because this isn't written by someone who's trying to emulate an experience. This is someone who's at least seen an experience.
Like they're writing about an experience that they've either experienced themselves or they understand that experience very well.
Yes.
So what is Forged by Fire about?
Forged by Fire is about Gerald, who has a mother who unfortunately has succumbed towards addiction. So he goes to live with his aunt, his great aunt. We all had a great aunt before. I still have a great aunt, like your grandmother's sister.
Yes.
He kind of slowly, of course, gets into this battle between who he has to really live with because, his mother went clean but she's not really like the most stable parent. The switch up, of course, is that the mom was actually kind of like pregnant and he has like a half sister, which he actually bonds with, of course. Unfortunately, she kind of has this like abusive kind of father figure that he has to kind of deal with. He kind of lives in this fantasy kind of, stable world, with love and acceptance, and he's able to have like birthday presents and, comfortability, like an actual true family. And when his mother comes back, it kind of uproots it because the reason why it's called Forged by Fire is because he accidentally caused a fire when he was younger because he was playing with a lighter. And he didn't, of course, because you're a kid, you don't really know what to do in that case. So he just hid under the couch hiding because he thinks his mom would save him. But then he succumbed towards like smoking inhalation, exhaustion. It's just like, because of that. And then it kind of switches up a bit. And also when he lives with his aunt, he gets that connection. But when the aunt dies, like from like a heart attack, he kind of gets custody transferred over to the only other living relative, which is his mother and the abusive stepfather.
Interesting. So it's like not the best situation and then already some trauma. That sounds like a very interesting book. I'm definitely going to have to check that out because it seems very deep. There's a lot of layers, a lot of things that are going on, but it also seems like it's coming from a very real place. And I think that's something that I love about reading Black authors is that even if whatever experience that they're writing about, I haven't fully experienced that, or even if they're writing in like an element that is just like not something that I could experience, it still feels very real. It still feels very relatable. It feels like something that's very deep and like you can understand that no matter what you're going through.
Yes, of course. She has written other books as well, from Tears of a Tiger, Forged by Fire, Darkness Before Dawn. She also written a bunch of series like Double Dutch, Copper Sun, Ramet and Julio, mostly about kind of racial experiences, about like how people connect with other people.
Interesting. Is that last one like a Romeo and Juliet retelling?
Yes, it's like it's not like white and black interracial relationships, but mostly like Hispanic black relationships because of like a gang kind of thing. But it's definitely like a very clear kind of parody of Romeo and Juliet.
Interesting. I like that a lot. Like I like when people are able to tell stories in a different way than what you're normally used to, and I feel like that's a very interesting retelling that I would personally like to read one day.
Of course. However, there is another thing that is very important as well: getting the right food. And surprisingly, there is a way to get the right food, but also support your favorite station, Wolf Radio. Ever wanted to support your favorite station while eating Waffle House hash browns? Wolf Radio is hosting a Spirit Night February 24th from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Maple Street Waffle House. That is the Maple Street Waffle House, not any others, on February 24th, 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. Your scattered, smothered order will cover our needs. Waffle House Spirit Night, 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Tuesday, February 24th at the Maple Street location. But we will be talking more about all of our favorite Black authors and the Black experience right after this break.
I started reading a book about a maze. I got lost in it. You're listening to Wolves of the Written Word.
Scatter, Smother, Covered by Wolf Radio at our Spirit Night, February 24th from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Maple Street Waffle House. In-person or to-go orders will help support our shows, podcasts, and digital content. So be an all-star and order an all-star at the Maple Street Waffle House on February 24th from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. That is 2 p.m. to 9 p.m., February 24th at the Maple Street Waffle House.
keep calm and listen on. You're listening to Wolves of the Written Word.
And welcome back, everybody, to Wolves of the Written Word, of course. Before, of course, we get into it again, of course, have you ever wanted to support your favorite station? You can basically kind of rep your favorite station by using your favorite merch store, of course. When you look good, you feel good. And when it fits good, you feel good. Now you can rep your favorite college station with our brand new merch store powered by Ozerb Apparel. Visit thewolfuwg.com and click about. Now, in our last segment, we have talked a little bit about my favorite author, Sharon M. Draper. But now I'm going to switch over to Janelle, in which she will be talking about her favorite Black author.
Yes, it's my segment, y'all. Are we excited? Yay. Okay. I actually mentioned my favorite Black author a bit earlier in the first segment. My favorite Black author has been one of my favorites since I was in about middle school, which I think is the first time I read one of his books. His name is Kwame Alexander, and I truly enjoy his books because I think he was one of the first Black authors that I read, like I said earlier, and also he was one of the authors who really was relating to me where I was at the point in my life that I was in. Because Kwame is very much known for writing stories in verses, which is basically kind of like he writes them as if they're poems and poetry. So it kind of keeps you very intrigued. It was one of my first times ever reading books like that. And he does something very well where he tells these stories that are so serious and have very serious and deep conversations and experiences that certain people are feeling. But he tells it in a way that it kind of even feels like it's just a normal day, or you're just reading somebody's inner thoughts in a way that it's just like, okay, yeah, whatever. This is just what we do. He's written books like The Crossover, Booked, Rebound, Swing, and I think my first book that I ever read of him was The Crossover, and then I read Rebound because Rebound is a prequel to The Crossover. And The Crossover is basically just a story talking about these two twin brothers who they both play basketball. And it's kind of just like their lives and the different things that they're going through in this certain point of their life where they're playing basketball, but then things are going on with their father. And then one of the brothers, he's really into poetry, and then the other brother is not. And there's just like a lot going on for them. And I truly love that book because it was at a point in my life where I was playing basketball because, fun fact about me, I played basketball for a couple years of my life up until like COVID. And I truly loved it because you're reading the book and you're reading it as if it's a poem or it's a bunch of different poems. And he's giving you quotes from different famous basketball players. And he's giving you different rules of basketball. And he's using basketball lingo to kind of tell this story and shape this story of like as they're growing in their journey in the game and as they're growing in their journey throughout life and all the things that they're going through. So I truly love that book. And I truly love Kwame as just an author in general.
Wow. I did not know that you played basketball.
Yes, I played basketball for a while because, okay, I guess we're just like lore dropping real quick. I am the oldest of two children, and my dad loves basketball. My dad has been playing basketball his whole entire life. And so when I was growing up, like we would watch basketball with my dad, and I started playing basketball with my dad, and then I joined like school teams, and I just stopped because of COVID. Like I love basketball truly and deeply. I probably should watch more basketball, but that's just like a fun fact about me. So when I found out this book was about basketball, that's one of the things that like intrigued me to it because I was just like, oh, I play basketball. This is a story about these Black twins who play basketball. Let me see what's going on here. And then I just loved it. Yeah.
Wow, of course. I am, of course, looking up Kwame Alexander now.
Yes.
It seems like that similar to Sharon M. Draper, he kind of dives a bit into a kind of unique genre in which he kind of focuses on this Black experience, but also kind of creating a very more grounded YA kind of genre that doesn't kind of focus so much on these cliches. It seems like that most of his focus is like sports novels,
Yeah.
which I have kind of read a little bit of sports novels before, besides like biographies about like Jackie Robinson or any of the people who are like from the African American like baseball league or something. But usually something like basketball or even track is definitely good because the physical aspects is good for mostly an accomplishment.
Yeah. No, most definitely. And I think that's something that's very interesting about Kwame and then also just Sharon, because they share like this interesting place in YA where it's, yes, what you normally would get from a YA book, but then it's also maybe a deeper experience told in a different way because it's told through a different voice than what you would normally see in a lot of YA novels that are very popular. And I love the fact that Kwame, he focuses a lot on like sports novels or like sports, that genre, because a lot of the time you won't really see people like go into that unless it's about love or if it's a love story. But he focuses more on like young people's experiences within these sports without stereotypes.
Of course. And speaking of experience, I think that it is a good time to kind of talk about and try to feel like what kind of experience we can get from an actual Black author.
Some lines don't just sit on the page, they stay with you. This is your quote of the day.
That's right. It's your quote of the day. And for those of you who are just tuning in, and of course, for those of you who haven't heard of what this special segment is before, quote of the day is where I pick a quote previously and beforehand that is tailored to our topic, and we talk about it and discuss it just a little bit to see how it connects to our life. So here is the quote that I have picked for today. Books are a form of political action. Books are knowledge. Books are reflection. Books change your mind. Toni Morrison, author of Song of Solomon. So how does that quote kind of make you feel, Janelle?
That quote makes me feel very represented, which I think is something that I think that quote is trying to portray, and is also like a very important topic, which is also one of the reasons that we're even talking about Black authors today, because representation matters. Representation is something that is very important, and it's very key for people to realize that the different things that we talk about or the different things that we read, it is a political statement. And it is something that is very deep, and it goes with anything and everything that's going on with us actively, because I can name multiple books that it's just like, this was a political statement. You maybe didn't read it as a political statement, but it is talking about something political, and that's why representation matters, because it's important for you to be represented. It's important for you to feel represented, which is, I think, something that we've already talked about today, which how the different Black authors that we've read made us feel represented in different ways.
Yes.
And that's why it's important to have them.
Yes, I do agree. And especially, I know that everything that's recently going on in regards to book bans and censorship, it's very easy to assume that to scoff off most of these things, but books, especially with this quote that I just stated, it is sort of like kind of immediate action. You learn something new from it. It doesn't always have to be something that is dangerous, but it does mean that you take a stance. It can, of course, we have talked a little bit about the Hunger Games and other novels, even something that's fictional or even something that's even biographical. It still tells something. It still tells not only just a story, but a topic that kind of focuses a bit more on something new, something unexpected.
Yeah. And I agree with you for that, because it's very important for you to see new perspectives and for you to read new perspectives, because it allows you to broaden your mindset. And I think that's exactly what the quote is kind of trying to tell you. Like, it's telling you it's important to realize that what you're reading is political in a way, and it's important for you to understand that and make different moves and understanding changes so that you can fully work for that.
Yes, and sometimes if the shoe was kind of sometimes on the other foot, it does often create some kind of controversial change, but at the same time, it still is sort of like that reflection. Like, especially one of the things for this quote, books are knowledge, books are reflection, books change your mind. It's basically true, because you might have not really seen something like this before if you have never read it. And I think that it's very important for that, because it's kind of like mostly just focusing a little bit on how you engage yourself with the world, especially with culture, because even like just a bit of a history lesson here, books, even way back then, maybe 1,000 years ago, were considered outlawed or even crazy, of course, I kind of talked about this a little bit maybe like 2 years ago, and during like college radio day, where we talked about democracy. But I mentioned stuff about book bans, where various empires started banning and burning books because they cause actual change in terms of the regime and everything. But it's also mostly about kind of different ideas and expressions, because as an aspiring writer, writing a book is hard. It takes a lot of dedication and patience, and you have a lot of ideas that you want to express. And when it kind of gets on that page and you do show it to other people, it connects with you a bit differently.
Yeah. Which makes sense, because it's like you said, writing a book is hard, and taking the time to even like come up with an idea and then write it down on paper and then release it to people, that's a very hard thing. And then so on top of that, to think about the fact that you want to write something so that people can read, so that they can understand an experience or be knowledgeable about an experience, that's something that's very deep and very important to do.
Of course. And still kind of keeping in a connection with our quote, I actually have a bit of a question that is kind of open for both of us. What would you say what book has changed your perspective the most on a certain issue? And it can be any issue entirely.
A book that has changed my well, what's yours?
I would say that for, I think, Animal Farm by George Orwell, and 1984 also by George Orwell. Those kind of changed my perspectives on how government and certain kinds of political action kind of changes things, and how even though that it seems like that you as like the common person aren't being affected by these things, you're still affected by these things as well. And I think that also other books, like I said before with Sharon M. Draper, it does bring you awareness about mental health or how you deal with certain relationships as well. Not just even in high school, but also in college, because I think that's why YA is such a big genre itself.
Oh, most definitely, because YA can go from the youngest of the young to the oldest of the old. YA can really hit you from basically when you're in middle school until you're having your own kids. Like, YA is a very big genre. It has a lot of things that you can talk about, a lot of different perspectives that you can go into. But I would say a book that maybe like changed my perspective on a lot of things would possibly be The Hate You Give.
Oh,
I don't know.
yes.
Yeah.
I have heard of that.
Yes, I love that book. I also love the movie. I think I read the book for the first time before the movie came out, and then I watched the movie and then reread the book. I love that. That story is so deep. And if you guys don't know, The Hate You Give is just like a very deep story about a young black girl whose best friend her best friend ends up dying, end up being killed by a police officer. And then it's just like a whole big entire thing where her life basically gets flipped upside down after his death, because of the fact that it becomes like a protest thing, and then people are blaming him, and then people are blaming the officer. And it just kind of like fully changed my perspective on being in different spaces and how different people interpret things into very different ways, and not everybody is going to understand the same experience as somebody else.
Yes, and The Hate You Give is like a very impactful novel, because it's definitely one of the bigger it definitely made waves in the way that it kind of, when it was published, in regards to police brutality and how it was expressing everything.
Yeah.
But another thing that is also a very, very important issue that we, of course, still are talking about is underage drinking and excessive alcohol drinking. College students who binge drank alcohol at least 3 times per week were roughly 6 times more likely to perform poorly on a test or project because of drinking. Dream City Brewing Company, Wolf Sports Network, and Wolf Radio proudly remind you to Drink Responsibly campaign. Students 21 and over should drink responsibly in an environment that discourages overindulging. Faculty won't take hangovers as excuses. And we will be talking more about
Black authors
right after this wonderful break, and hopefully that you guys are enjoying this, of course.
You're listening to Wolves of the Written Word, where the stories are more than just what's on the pages.
Ugh, I'm so happy to finally be out of class. Today's so boring. Hark, what is that distant melody I hear?
That, my friend, is the Wolf Radio Remote, a place to hang with friends, listen to some rad tunes, and connect with the students of Wolf Radio. You see that black tent in the distance?
Yeah?
Why don't we head there now?
Did you just teleport me?
That's the power of the remote, my man. Brought to you by Dine West at UWG Dine_West.
The show is not over yet. We'll be back with more Wolves of the Written Word here on Wolf Radio.
And welcome back, of course, to Wolves of the Written Word. And, of course, I am feeling a bit hungry. I have actually not eaten breakfast yet, actually, yeah. But scattered, smothered, covered by Wolf Radio at our Spirit Night, February 24th from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Maple Street Waffle House. In-person or to-go orders will help support our shows, podcasts, and digital content. So be an all-star and order an all-star at the Maple Street Waffle House on February 24th from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. That is 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. February 24th at the Maple Street Waffle House.
Yes, make sure y'all come support us.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it, of course. Man, Waffle House. Anyway, so we, of course, have been talking about, if you're just tuning in, mostly about Black authors and the importance of them. We touched just a little bit into the Harlem Renaissance and mostly about different kinds of contemporary Black authors, such as Kwame Alexander, Sharon M. Draper. And it's just really important to kind of see that representation in the light. So today, we're actually going to be talking just a little bit about how important that representation kind of means to us. So basically, the first question that I think I want to be that kind of brings a very important kind of question is, what topics or perspectives that you feel that Black authors often bring that feel underrepresented somewhere else?
I think Black authors do a very good job at bringing in topics of like racism and feeling like unexcluded or even feeling kind of like other very well. I think Black authors will approach racism in a way that doesn't always feel like very bulky or feel very like, oh, we're just dropping this in here to have another plot. Like, Black authors will approach it in a way of like, this is something that is actively happening to people. This is not something that we're just bringing up because we're Black and we want to bring it up. Like, no, this is something that's very serious. And I really feel like they represent that in a very interesting way, and they represent it in all the different ways that you can experience it.
Of course, I do agree with that. Like, whenever, like, for a Black author, they approach racism in a way where, like, this is like, you know, the outsider, but also kind of feeling like that you want this acceptance to happen because everything is coming out at us rather than just us pushing forward. But also, it kind of, the one thing I also noticed is that it kind of highlights sort of like how much we can also deal with the kind of equality that we are also striving for as well. Like, is it possible for us to kind of still have these kind of relationships and kind of representations of anyone, of any culture, while also trying to make sure that ours aren't like smothered down?
Yeah, most definitely. And I also very much appreciate, because I know we've already talked about a couple like Black YA authors, I truly appreciate the way that they will talk about different experiences and different things that you may feel as like a young Black person. They talk about that very well, and they kind of like encapsulate those experiences in ways that you wouldn't always think of, like showing them or feeling them or like writing it out, but they do that very well. And then like quick little Adia shout out, because I know Adia, she was planning on talking about Jason Reynolds. I've never personally read Jason Reynolds' books, but I have read a couple things or heard a couple things about the things that he writes, and I know that he talks a lot about like young Black experiences.
Yes, I am reading a little bit through the book that Adia has recommended for me, and I see that Jason Alexander definitely kind of dives into kind of this youth kind of experience where like you kind of relate to this sort of this innocence, but also kind of this connection towards how people see and perceive different things as well. It's also kind of pretty interesting because it also shows that you can kind of dive into these topics without really worrying about like other people kind of trying to hide it. Also, it's not really like ham-fisted either. Like, when most authors kind of talk about topics, maybe like racism or anything like that, they usually often focus more on the information about it rather than the experience.
Yeah.
And when it does come to a Black author, they do often just talk about mostly just how that experience connects to us and how it makes it a bit different, rather than just giving out information. And as a history buff, pretty much a huge history buff about anything and all things history, you do have to treat it a bit more broadly. But at the same time, you also have to acknowledge that this stuff has happened, because history can, of course, change like before.
Yeah.
When people do kind of get into this kind of control.
Most definitely. You have to acknowledge the fact that it's happened and it's actively happening still. Like, it may not happen in as much of a broad and out there way as it may have happened in the past for a lot of people, but there are still a bunch of people who are experiencing those things actively, and it's important to mention it, not just in a way of like, oh yeah, racism was here, racism happened sometimes. It's important to mention it in the way of like, this is what racism can look like. This is what experiences for certain people who are going through racism can feel like. Like, I know I've mentioned the book before, Ace of Spades, which I just remembered was actually written by a Black author. And even though, like, I've talked about in the past, like, I have certain problems with the way that Ace of Spades ended, I do truly appreciate the way that in that book, they show you, or the author, she chooses to show you how racism is happening to these two Black teenagers, and how it's like not something they expected at all, but it's happening to them in such a deep and disturbing way that's important for people to realize that this is something that does happen to people.
Of course. And I have dove a little bit into Ace of Spades. I haven't read it yet, but I did read the plot summary, and oh boy, it's a doozy. It's
definitely a doozy. They definitely go through a lot, and it's like, even though I have problems with how it ended, because I feel like it ended just like a bit like, here's the ending, okay, we're moving on. But like, before you get to the ending, they go through a lot. The main characters go through a lot, and it's just nothing but pure racism. Like, that's all that is motivating everything that they go through.
Wow. Very crazy. But you know what's also just as crazy? Irresponsible drinking. In a recent survey, almost 53% of full-time college students ages 18 to 22 drank alcohol in the past month. That is why Dream City Brewing Company, Wolf Sports Networks, and Wolf Radio's Drink Responsibly campaign is here to remind you that there is no drinking under the age of 21. Never drink and drive, even if it's one alcoholic drink. And add food and water when you drink so you don't end up texting your ex, which means know your limits. Of course, I think that it is time almost for the show to kind of bring a little bit to its end, of course. Of small wrap up, of course. But I think that we have discussed very broadly and very engagingly that about Black authors, which I was definitely excited to talk about as well. Yeah. And I'm definitely glad that we were able to talk about this. And hopefully we did create a bunch of recommendations and different kinds of authors and books that we can definitely provide to you, dear listeners, of course, in regards to Black authors and the Black experience. What about you, Janelle?
Yeah, I agree. I'm very happy that we talked about Black authors, because I think it's very important. As we've said, I don't know how many times. If you have been counting the amount of times that we've said this today, please let us know in the chat if you can, or if you're listening on YouTube. Representation matters. So I think it's very important that we were able to talk about this so that different people can learn about representation, and different people can go through these recommendations and actually feel that they can read something that makes them feel represented in multiple different ways. So yeah, I love it. Read a Black author if you have the time to.
Of course. And even for me, I do want to try and at least experience myself towards different Black authors as well. And I know that sometimes it feels like that you do feel a bit, I guess, under-knowledged about most of these kind of authors or this kind of topic, but it's still okay. You can still do your research and still try and get into that experience to actually be able to find different authors that can basically help you out and to experience kind of this Black authorship that we're all kind of trying to dive into.
Most definitely. And it's also important to know that Black authors write all kinds of books, y'all. They write all kinds of books in all kinds of genres. Past what we've talked about today, I know we focused a little bit more on YA today, but it's also important to know Black authors write horror, Black authors write romance, they write fantasy, they write everything and anything, they write dystopian. So if whatever the books that we've recommended to you today are not really your cup of tea, that's perfectly fine, because you can find a Black author who could write whatever it is that you're looking for in a book, I promise.
Yes, of course. And fantasy, sci-fi, anything, any and all genres, of course. even though that we did talk about stuff that is a bit more grounded. But if you like more fantastical stuff, there are Black authors who have read those things or written those things before. And I actually think I have a little bit of Black authors who have created those things before. I think might be in my library. But for now, mostly that could also be your cup of tea for when you want to read or experience into how you want to be for Black authors. Yeah. But in the meantime, I think that is all the time that we have for today, of course. It was very excellent and very amazing to talk about Black authors with you guys and listeners, and with Janelle, of course.
Of course.
And I know that Adia isn't with us, of course, because she, of course, got busy with something. But, of course, hopefully she'll be on the next episode where we'll be talking about something else. But in the meantime, hope you guys stay cool. And in the meantime, this has been Wolves of the Written Word.